This is the story of a little girl who wanted to be a paleontologist, of her expedition to the remotest part of Earth and the monster that she found there. It's also the more recent story of an international investigation into the grave robbing of the monster's tomb and the bones that led us to understand what this strange monster looked like in life. My name is Benjamin Berger, and in this video I want to introduce you to the amazingly bizarre dinosaur Deinocheirus and tell you the story of its remarkable discovery. Born in 1925, Zophia Jaworska grew up in Warsaw, Poland. On September 1st, 1939, when she was only 14 years old, Nazi Germany invaded her country. Her teenage years, when most girls would be attending high school and thinking about college, Zophia joined the Polish resistance. The goal of Nazi Germany was the extermination or enslavement of the Polish people. Education was strictly forbidden, particularly anything esoteric like paleontology, and the University of Warsaw was destroyed and burned to the ground. Under Nazi occupation, students were forbidden to further their education in any way. Zophia had dreams of becoming a paleontologist, of getting an education, and she had to find a way. A clandestine underground university formed where students would attend classes and lectures at teachers' personal homes. Traveling in small groups is not to raise the alarm. Simply attending one of these underground classes would get you shot. Zophia continued her education in this fashion of traveling from home to home and studied zoology from professors and teachers who were in hiding. In 1944, after 5 years of occupation by Nazi Germany, Zophia participated in the Warsaw Uprising, a coordinated attack by resistant fighters to overthrow the Nazi occupiers. The Polish resistance fought, and the city was nearly annihilated. 85% of the buildings were destroyed, and 250,000 people were dead, as the Nazis killed its inhabitants and burned the city to the ground. Her underground education had ended, but soon, in 1945, the war itself would end, and she would be able to go back to school. After Poland was freed in 1945, Zophia eagerly began attending the newly reopened University of Warsaw. With all the buildings on campus destroyed in the war, her professor, Roman Kozłowski, taught his paleontology class in his living room. Roman Kozłowski encouraged Zophia's interest in paleontology and introduced her to dinosaurs uncovered in the 1920s by the American Mongolian expedition, such as Velociraptor. The stories excited her own aspirations to travel to Mongolia to study dinosaurs when she got older. With limited resources, Zophia began studying something closer to home, trilobites from the Ordovician and Silurian limestones in central Poland. Zophia dived into her research and began to publish papers on the fossils that she found, spending every summer vacation collecting fossil invertebrates from the mountains. In 1950, on a mountain climbing expedition, she met her husband, and the two were married in 1958. In 1960, her longtime advisor, Roman Kozłowski, retired from the university, and Zophia was hired as his replacement to teach paleontology. And around this time, Zophia learned that the Soviet Union had sent Russian paleontologists to Mongolia in the 1940s and early 1950s, and that there was an active team of researchers working on collecting dinosaurs for the museum in Moscow. Zophia wanted desperately to be a member of one of these teams, and in 1962 she saw the chance to organize her own expedition to Mongolia. In 1962, the Academy of Sciences of the Mongolian People's Republic was established, which was staffed by a team of Mongolian geologists and paleontologists, many of whom had studied in Russia, and they were looking for international scientific cooperation with other Soviet bloc countries. Zophia drafted a proposal to work with the Mongolian Academy of Sciences on a joint expedition between Poland and Mongolia. The proposal was approved, and Zophia found herself organizing her own expedition to Mongolia in 1963 to find dinosaurs in the remotest parts of the Gobi Desert. Organizing an expedition to a very remote place requires a lot of thought and a lot of preparation. There are no grocery stores, no restaurants, no hotels, no paved roads, and most of the desert was unmapped. Vehicles were hard to come by as well, but she arranged for 6-wheeled Polish military trucks, these Star 66s, to transport gasoline, water, firewood, and food, as well as the massive dinosaur bones that they would extract. It was a large expedition, and Zophia worked brilliantly with a team of about 30 people speaking different languages and ensuring a successful expedition. The team included several accomplished women paleontologists who contributed to the team's expertise. The team collected dinosaurs and other fossils from the Gobi Desert from 1963 until 1971. The discoveries of dinosaurs and fossil mammals living alongside the dinosaurs would define Zophia's career for the next 4 decades. She specialized on fossil mammals herself, particularly multituberculate mammals, where she found amazingly complete skeletons in the desert. She would hand off the larger dinosaurs to other researchers who would lead the effort to describe them to the scientific community. One of the most famous of the dinosaurs discovered during the expedition was the fighting dinosaurs, a specimen of Velociraptor and Protoceratops entangled in a duel to the death, discovered in 1971. Unfortunately, at the time of its discovery, Zophia was suffering from a ruptured eardrum and did not participate in its excavation in the field. But it was during her 3rd expedition to Mongolia in 1965, Zophia would find the most incredible creature of her career. On a rare rainy day, she was prospecting in a locality known as Ultan Ul 3 and found some fragmentary fossil ribs and 2 enormous limbs, measuring 2.5 meters long. At the end of these limbs were claws measuring over 30 centimeters long. The bones were scattered on a flat butte, and Zophia carefully collected them. The bones were prepared and studied by 2 other female paleontologists, Helska Osmolowska and Eva Ronwiski, who named the creature Deinocheirus, or terrible claws or terrible hands. Besides the large clawed forelimbs, nothing else was known of the fossilized creature, leaving everyone to wonder what this monster looked like. The giant clawed arms were put on display at the Natural History Museum in Mongolia, and it excited everyone's imagination of what Deinocheirus may have looked like. As a kid, learning about Deinocheirus, I imagined a ferocious carnivorous dinosaur behind these claws, that these claws were used to grab hold of prey and devour other dinosaurs. They just look so wicked. Professional paleontologists, however, suggested a more Unitarian use of the large claws for climbing or for protection, comparing them with giant ground sloths, suggesting that the dinosaur was a plant eater rather than a meat eater. In fact, Helska Osmolowska suggested that the dinosaur was closely related to ornithomimosaurs, the ostrich-like dinosaurs, but was a very large member of the group. This received an endorsement from the American paleontologist John Ahlstrom, suggesting that the clawed creature was an oversized ornithomimosaur, which those guys also have fairly long claws. Others suggested that Deinocheirus was closely related to Therizinosaurus, a long-clawed herbivore theropod discovered during the Soviet expeditions to Mongolia in the 1940s, 1950s. In any case, more of the skeleton was needed, and it would not be discovered until many years later. In 2006, the Mongolian Academy of Sciences began working on revisiting and collecting new dinosaurs in the region where the original specimen had been collected in 1965. A joint effort by Korean, Canadian, and Mongolian scientists visited the region. The team was horrified to see that much of the area had been poached by recent looters, who were collecting dinosaurs illegally in the area. As the Gobi Desert was now much more accessible than it had been in the 1960s, these looted graves dotted the Badlands wherever the team visited, and rather than documenting new discoveries, the team was conducting criminal investigations into the widespread problem of looted dinosaur sites. It was at one of these sites that the team collected the discarded fossilized bones of a large dinosaur that they noticed what remained of the shoulder bones appeared to belong to Deinocheirus. The looters had taken the skull and the large clawed hands, but had left much of the fossilized remains behind. Despite having only fragments left by the looters, the team was able to reconstruct some of the bones of the rest of the creature, noting tall neural spines from the vertebrae along the back, indicating that the dinosaur had a large hump, like a camel. In 2008, the team revisited the original site and found a few additional fragments of gastralia, or the belly ribs, that further study revealed that the original specimen had been scavenged upon by a Tarbosaurus. The Mongolian researchers found another specimen in 2009, but it also had been poached, finding that the skull had been taken and removed by looters. Nevertheless, the additional material helped to give a clearer picture with enough material to publish on, and in 2013, the team decided to present their discoveries to the scientific community. The buzz of additional fossils of the mysterious Deinocheirus got reporters around the world excited, and the news of additional specimens of this mysterious dinosaur quickly spread. The possibility of the existence of skulls of this mysterious dinosaur on the black market also led museum workers to be on the lookout for these illegally obtained fossils. In 2014, the identity of a fossilized skull and the associated bones smuggled illegally from Mongolia was announced in Belgium, where the fossil had been purchased from a Japanese dealer who likely had acquired the fossil from a local cartel of criminals. Deinocheirus finally had a skull. And the skull was that of a bizarre duck-like animal. No scary long fangs or teeth, no vicious eyes or killer face, but a broad lower jaw and a flattened duck-like head. Deinocheirus appeared to have a diet of marshy plants and maybe fish, much like living ducks and swans have today. And rather than being a killer, Deinocheirus was a clawed, duck-like dinosaur with a hump. It likely used the large clawed hands to paddle through the swampy areas and avoid predatory Tarbosaurs by living and swimming in the water. This allowed the animal to get bigger, as it was not as specialized in running as its ornithomimosaurian ancestors had been. Deinocheirus was a weird and strange animal, a herbivore, a duck-like humped large dinosaur, and despite its giant predatory-looking claws, was using those claws for defense. Zophia got to see the reconstructions of the monster that she had found in 1965, just before her death in 2015. And I think, like everyone, she was surprised at what the dinosaur truly looked like. This is what's so marvelous about paleontology. It is a science of the unpredictable discovery of new creatures and new bizarre animals. And despite thinking that we know everything, there are still mysteries to be solved and new fossils to be discovered. And those discoveries can completely change what we previously had suspected. Deinocheirus was unlike what we imagined it to be. It was in fact much more bizarre than our imaginations. I love that about paleontology. It is a field of science that continues to surprise us with its amazing discoveries. If you'd like to learn more about Zophia and her fossil expeditions into the Gobi Desert, I highly recommend her book, which is called In Pursuit of Early Mammals. It's not just about mammals. She also talks a lot about dinosaurs that she found in the Gobi Desert, a lot of her experiences, although she did spend most of her time, most of her career was studying Mesozoic mammals, which she goes into a lot of detail with. But it's a really great book, a really great read. She profiles many of the famous paleontologists that she worked alongside in Mongolia and in the Gobi Desert. So it's a really good book if you want to check it out. It's published by the Indiana University Press, and I'll put a link below in the description. I want to thank Brian Clever, Pablo Luzato Figuez, Arcodus 1811, Justin Bovey, Emmett Larson, and Marlo and Draco, and Fred Olney. Thank you everyone for your support, continued support on Patreon. If you'd like to learn more about supporting these educational videos on paleontology and geology, check out the link in the description below.